is all I can say. You know what I care about, guys, is face punching. And we get back to it as UFC 307 is on Saturday. It's officially fight week. Goes and I will be hosting a watch along over at MMA Junkie at 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And the main card will continue through that. That's where you decide whether you watch on your own or watch with us, or, let us tell you what's happening. I should say, whether you order the pay-per-view or not. 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. I did talk to our colleague Farah Hanoun. She'll be hosting her preview show at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific to get the party started. And UFC 307, guys, is it getting the fair buzz? We do have 2 title fights. Kayla Harrison, one of the free agents that the UFC signed a while back, who had a great debut a few months ago. She's on the card. Legendary Jose Aldo, he's on the card after, coming back to the sport after a couple years and looking impressive down in Rio de Janeiro. You feeling the buzz, Dan Tom?
Yes and no. It's a little tough. I feel like, Noche in Paris almost like had themes to it, right? Whereas this card, we're back in the garden, or not back in the, back in Elevation. UFC's been going there quite a bit to Utah next door. Glad Utah's getting some love, but outside of the 2 title fights, man, it starts to kind of, we got names like Jose Aldo and Kayla Harrison, but the card format is way off, in my opinion. But then again, I look at it and there's only one 155 fight and there's no featherweight fight. So I guess I can't complain for no Joe Silva main card openers. They're going with Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland. Like, I mean, I don't know. I almost would dare say I would want that to add to the endless sludge of middleweight Apex 5-rounders that we're getting. Than having to trust these 2 in the main card opener, which is low-key one of the most important spots of a pay-per-view card.
I love that word, sludge. Nice one, Dan. Nolan, how about you, man? UFC 307, are you pumped? We did lose Mozar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling, and I know some of you are going to have a laugh at that, but listen, I kind of wanted to see those 2 kind of tangle, strategically on the ground. I'm a little bummed out. It's been reshuffled to 310 if anybody's wondering. But Nolan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird card, honestly. Like, I can't, looking at it, like I don't look at it and say, I think these fights are going to be bad or they're kind of boring. But there's not, I don't know, there's a lot of name value, like a lot of notable names. But maybe I think when you have a pay-per-view where the main event, a lot of people, including myself, like I feel pretty strongly that Alex will win. And then the co-main event's a little underwhelming. And then, you got Aldo, you got Kayla Harrison's probably one of the more interesting fights on that card. So I don't hate it. I mean, again, vets from start to finish. I was thinking about this the other day. We could have like multiple retirement fights to start the night. Like we got Court McGee and Tim Means fighting. Court has lost a handful in a row. He's fighting at home. So like, who knows what's going to happen there. You got OSP, who's I think kind of approaching maybe that as well. And then you got Carla Esparza, who's already said it's going to be her retirement fight. So we could be looking at the rare three retirements off the bat there. But I don't know. It's kind of intriguing. It's enough to catch my attention. A lot of vets. Is it the best pay-per-view we've ever seen, especially coming off of a spectacle like the Sphere? No, but I don't think it's the worst I've ever seen either.
All right. How about you, Goes? And let's not forget, Joaquin Buckley's also on this card. Granted, he's fighting a chess player in Stephen Thompson. So we'll see how that one plays out. I think it's not so bad, to tell you the truth.
It's not it's definitely not the worst card, but it's not the best card. But there is just no buzz going on right now. We kind of went off that high from the Noche card, but then college football came, right? And then NFL came knocking down the door. MLB playoffs are starting to kick up. Nolan, MLB playoffs are when your team does good and they move on to the tournament. And then you even look at like
season playoffs, or is this?
And then you even look at pro wrestling, right? Like that Mr. McMahon documentary that's on Netflix. Like everybody seems to be talking about something else. The UFC needs to get on the promotion for this because they don't really have that bad of a card. It's a decent card, but you're going up against the juggernauts that are all these other sports and things that are going on. They definitely need to grab people's attention. And you have characters on this card that I believe can do that. Like when Kayla Harrison gets behind a mic, it's so much fun. It's great to hear the things that she says. When you think about Poatan and the highlights that you can generate from that, I think the UFC needs to pick it up. They need to pick up the promotion because they have a decent card, but I don't know how many people are going to tune in just because of all the other options we have that distract us from that.
And Julianna Peña, man, she can run her mouth too. I'd put her in front of as many cameras as well, and get Pennington, going as well, because when Pennington is pushed, she will clap back. That's your title fight. They got history from all the way from the Ultimate Fighter. I don't know. Like, you're right, guys. There is too much content, too much entertainment out there to just let this thing get buried at the beginning of the week. You got to come in firing all those days so you can get people pumped up. I'm acting like I actually get a cut of the pay-per-view. I'm just trying to fire up our crowd. What does a win do for Pereira? Nolan King, what do you think, man? What kind of status does this elevate him to?
Just for the real, another show built around him. He'll maintain his status as one of the more active UFC champions ever. So again, I think he's on top of the world right now. Another win's certainly not going to hurt him. But I don't think it necessarily does as much as like if he were to be fighting, I don't know, Izzy again or so. I don't know. Again, this lightweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight's in a weird place. If Alex had fought Magomed Ankalaev, I think that would have been a stronger career builder for sure. But at the end of the day, he is one of the UFC's biggest stars, and the amount of time, the amount of title defenses, the amount of highlights, the amount of pay-per-views headline, it all contributes to him getting, to be onto the next level.
Dan, Tom, how about Khalil Rountree? This one's a big one for him. What would it do from him? And I'm curious. Have you shared time with him? Because it seems like I remember covering him at Tough Enough when we covered you. How well do you know this cat, and what would a win for him do?
I mean, not well these days and stuff. Like, we used to hang out back in the same, same hardcore punk clubs and going to the same shows and stuff when he was 300 pounds. And, I look like a Native American with hair down on my shoulders. That was another life ago. We're both, especially Khalil. He's really a different person now. You know what I'm saying? But obviously I've been following his career, and I do think it would be huge for him. I think it would be, as big of a Poatan Pereira fan that I am, obviously I would be so enthralled, so happy for my boy Khalil if he's able to pull this off. I think it's a great story, from whether you want to talk about, his father, his tragic passing, who managed Boys to Men, and that notable story, to the, the weight loss story, or any just like, the mental health story, doing it for the weirdos. And I mean that in the most endearing way as I raise my hand in that weirdo club. All these things, it would be so great to watch Khalil win. Poatan is 1-0 against UFC level southpaws. He's only fought 2 dedicated southpaws. If you go back to Thomas Powell and that knockout in the LFA, and I'll release my southpaw report again, a more detailed version than the last one from UFC 300 when he fought Jamal Hill for Alex Pereira. But he does look comfortable in these matchups against southpaws, though. So it's not going to be an easy night, that's for sure.
I'm glad you said that too, Dan, because if you'll recall, remember Gokhan Saki came over from the kickboxing world with a lot of accolades. So for anyone that says, oh man, this guy's a world kickboxing champion, because does Rountree want to stand with him for too long? It was Rountree that put him out, right?
Yep. Yeah. Gokhan was, granted a little more toward the end of his career. And Gokhan was a guy who, let's be honest, probably should have fought at middleweight, but that's an absolutely 100% relevant reference though, George, that you got to bring up when breaking down this fight, right? Of course, Poatan is just massive. He's one of my favorite things, guys, on the internet is watching Alex Pereira just take pictures next to people and making them look like they, you're taking pictures next to heavyweights and making it look like the heavyweights of middleweight. That's my favorite content on the internet right now.
Hey, Dan, when you have a guy that's just so good, so technically good, like Poatan, is it almost like their kryptonite when they go up in front of a guy that's almost like the reverse, right? All the different angles that Rountree throws from, the power that he throws from, everything's so unconventional. Can that almost be like a scary thing? Because I kind of agree with you. I think this guy might actually have some moments in this fight.
No, that's a great point. Absolutely. From styles to even the stance, right? The southpaw stance can throw some fighters off, which is why I'll usually do those reports. But even with that, like to your point goes, facing a less, not less seasoned striker, because Khalil's obviously seasoned, but like, a non-traditional style. And more so to that point, Poatan in particular, he has a lot of comfort. He's kind of got a low-handed guard, right? Because a lot of his style is predicated on trap setting. He wants you to take that shot in. So he's got his left hook. He's got triggers ready, but it's a gamble, right? It's a high gamble, especially at this weight class. So for that reason alone, Khalil is a dangerous guy. I think the odds are like what, a 5-1 spread. That doesn't surprise me, but there ain't no way I'm betting 5-1 favorite in Poatan. Like it's dog shots all day at those odds. But yeah, I'd be leaning toward the champion. But to Goza's point, dude, we're gonna be flipping coins whether you realize it or not, folks. You're flipping coins in that fight.
Yeah, let's move on to the co-main event: Pennington versus Pena. What's the best result for this division goes? Because on the one side, Pennington would give stability, right? Uh, the, we haven't really kind of had that, I guess, since Amanda Nunes' long epic run. And then speaking of, if Pena wins, she's of the opinion that she might be able to fish out Nunes from retirement and maybe face her before we even get to the winner of Harrison and Ketlin.
Yeah, I think for the division, for the UFC, obviously, I think Pena is probably the better outcome. She's a great heel. A matchup with her and say Kayla Harrison, I think that would be phenomenal. Can you imagine them going back and forth? But you can't sleep on Raquel Pennington and just how bad she wants this. The heat goes all the way back to the Ultimate Fighter between those two, so you can't really counter out. But if you're asking what would probably benefit the division, the UFC, I think they want to see Julianna Peña come out of this one.
Nolan Harrison and Kellen Vera, excuse me. Is that the actual number one? Because I mean, it does look like Harrison's in that position to step in case one of the two in the main event can't go. So do we just call this an official number one contender fight now at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, right? I mean, I think Kayla's just a no-brainer next. I think we were even questioning if maybe she would be in a title fight in her second UFC fight. So for me, I think, yeah, absolutely a no-brainer. I think it's super sellable, like Ghost said. If Julianna Peña wins and Kayla Harrison wins, that's a pretty promotable fight in terms of the lead up, in terms of the build, in terms of Kayla's story. And if Raquel wins, I mean, again, like I think Kayla Harrison going for the title is enough to sell, or I don't know if sell is the right word, but enough to, kind of promote and build some excitement around a women's 135 bantamweight title fight. And then who knows? I mean, Amanda Nunes, if she sees Kayla Harrison standing there with that title, is that enough motivation to see, hey, when I go to the negotiating table, maybe I can get some serious dollar signs to come back for one more and fight in what would be one of the biggest women's fights ever? I think it could be in a year from now, we could be in a very interesting time at women's bantamweight, which is a place that we have not been for a while.
Mm-hmm. Who are you leaning towards, Nolan King, in the co-main event? Who do you like? Just a lean. I don't know if you turned in your pick yet, and I don't know. We can reserve our official pick till Saturday because we like to see them weigh in. We like to see them how they're comporting themselves on fight week. So what's your early lean right now?
I think for me, my early lean is Pennington, but it's kind of on a basis of like I maybe don't give her enough credit usually. So this might be like a reverse psychology thing going on. I might have to go back and think about it a little bit more. But I could also see her just playing the big spoiler of us, talking. We're MMA people that talk about MMA all the time. We know that the universe is going to let us down often. So, if people are excited about that Pena fight and the banter and the back and forth and a little bit of rivalry there, then I think the MMA gods will probably give us a little pushback and give us Raquel Pennington by split decision instead.
And what about in the main event? Who do you like, Nolan?
I do like Pereira, but like Dan said, I mean, it's an interesting matchup. Like when this was announced, I think my initial pushback in my brain about it was not something that I had ever thought of. And I thought that there were a couple of guys that had maybe done more to earn it. Like I think Ankalaev kind of got hosed. Granted, I don't know all the circumstances around that, but I am going to lean with Pereira, but I'm really excited to see it. I mean, in terms of just value and fun, like we're getting a kickboxing, essentially a kickboxing match in MMA between two guys that know a little bit of MMA as well.
I'm a huge Pereira fan, but I think Rountree's going to pull off the upset. Mm-hmm. And I think Pennington's going to win the fight. I think Peña's working off 2 years of inactivity, not fighting. That's a long time. And Pennington has gotten better than that mauling she took by Nunes in Brazil about 5 years ago. How about you, Goes? Any early leans from you?
I am kind of exactly in the same boat you are, George. I just don't know how dumb we might look come Monday because that script could be flipped so easily. But kind of for the same reasons, man. I actually like those two. Put them together in a parlay.
Dan, I know you're going to do a lot of work here for the website and on your podcast, but what are your early leans? And is it going to be hard not to choose your homie that you used to go to the punk concerts with in Rountree?
Listen, here's what you do. I'm leaning toward the favorites, and you guys can all, of course, get the details and the confirmation on my in-depth breakdowns at MMAJunkie.com as per usual. But I am leaning toward the favorites to answer your question. I will say this: if you're afraid of looking dumb, and you don't disagree with the favorites, but you're tempted on the dogs, or there's that weird chaos in the back of your mind, which Nolan's totally right to think about for that co-main event. You just pick Poatan, you play, and you play Khalil, and you win either way there, right? In a weird way, whether it's your ego or your wallet. And then, who cares who you pick for the co-main event? But just if you bet anything, just bet that it goes to split decision, and then you'll probably be right there, regardless who wins. Classic WMMA split. But yeah, I'm also leaning toward Pennington, who to touch on a point Nolan made. I agree in the sense that Pennington seems to get really criminally underrated in general. She's done well for me, even though I picked against her last time and that didn't go well for me. But I hope she wins this time. And nothing against Julianna Peña, but my goodness, I'm just getting flashbacks between her and Nunes. And if you could get like the most two annoying, at least for me, the most two annoying ever post-fight interviewers, they like interviews or kind of personalities. No offense, I'm sure they're fine ladies, and whatnot. But my goodness, I want to just put a gun to my head and end it. So for that reason, I'll take Pennington, because if whether it's Pennington giving it to Harrison or whatever, if something lures Nunes back, I can't take a third matchup between Pennington and Nunes, Peña and Nunes, guys. I can't. So give me Pennington.
Goes. Kaylin Vera also has a background in judo, so that'll help her out a little bit for Kayla Harrison. But man, Harrison just keeps getting better and better. The way she thoroughly thumped Holly Holm was very, very impressive. You give Vieira much of a chance in this fight in the featured bout against the former two-time PFL champion?
I mean, I give her a little bit of a chance, but that improvement that we continuously see from Kayla Harrison and her mindset, I think is going to be very, very difficult to overcome here in this matchup.
Yeah, she is a bigger gal. She's strong, so we'll see how she can do with that. But man, I'm telling you, I couldn't believe how good Harrison looked the other day. Nolan, are you excited about Jose Aldo versus Mario Batista? Batista is also one of my favorite fighters. Everyone always, latches on to the champions or whatever, but I've been watching this kid for a while now, ever since he was on MMA Junkie with us, telling us how he used to work for Safe Light. He used to repair windows in the hot Arizona sun, and now he's a full-time fighter, but he's really a nice kid. I'm really looking forward to this fight, but who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I lean with Aldo, but I think Mario's earned a few for taking some of these fights that are perhaps the name value isn't there as much, fighting the Jonathan Martinez and the Mario Batistas of the world. But I love the fight. I mean, Mario's looked great in his last handful. Like you said, we've seen him kind of build himself, and it hasn't always been a straight line upward, but he's come out with a pretty good product that's not even finalized yet in himself. So I dig it. I think it's good matchmaking. I think it had to be somebody kind of in that range of fighters for both guys. So I'm here for it, and I think it's gonna be a pretty good technical battle.
Mm-hmm. Dan, we've seen Davis and Figueiredo win at 125, and now I think he's 3-0 at 135, and people are saying, hey, he should fight for a title. And then you hear about Henry Cejudo. He took some time off, came back, and he was in the mix right away. Didn't go well for him, but there's talk about if he were to go to 125, he could be in line for a title, probably off one win. It has something to do with these guys formerly wearing the crown, the belt, what they bring to the table. How about Jose Aldo? If he can knock off another guy, as popular as he is, could he sneak in the back door there and fight for a world title if he impresses against Mario Batista?
I want to say yes, but the thing is, I'm going to have some hope here, because you mentioned Davis and Figueiredo, and by the way, I'm so pessimistic about matchups. I don't get excited for anything, whether it's because I'm burnt out, or like the pandemic means that we don't have matchups until the day of sometimes, even though I feel like we're still kind of in that mode. But Davis and Figueiredo versus Peter Yan is a fight I've been calling for since before Davis and Figueiredo even fought for the title at 125, since late 2018. I've been calling for that fight. Finally, the matchmakers listened. I don't know if they're listening to me, but it's the right fight, even though they're about 3 or 4 years late. Other fights that they're about 3 or 4 years late was Jose Aldo versus Dominic Cruz, or they could have done Dominic Cruz versus Frankie Edgar, which was a fight that I was calling for as my bold prediction in 2015 to see in 2016, when we should have seen, we arguably could have started to see the Edgar versus Cruz if Edgar would have came down a little earlier, like he should have, right, to bantamweight. The point is, the UFC matchmakers have missed so many of these opportunities. But the fact that they are now staying relevant to 307, doing old guy matchups, even when they're not glamorous, we go down to Tim Means versus Court McGee, great matchup. All 4 of those kind of matchups, by the way, matchmakers. Why don't we do that for our greats? You know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, whether Aldo can go to the title or not, I think he's got like the pass where we can give him, you know, a Dominic Cruz fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, if Moicano can boost himself potentially to a title by beating an air quote top 5 guy, to Moicano's own point, Dan Hooker shouldn't even be there, right? Speaking in hypotheticals here, well, why not give Aldo like the veteran kind of matchups? But instead, they gave him the title shot too early to said phenom Peter Yan, and he had to take like a ridiculous beating thanks to a ref who gratefully excused himself for the rest of the weekend. That's how bad that stoppage was. They wasted that. Now we're getting like these second, third, like I don't know how many lives Aldo has, but the UFC is damn lucky to have him. And I love Batista too, by the way. Shouts, great shout, George. But give Aldo something better. Give him something more meaningful, whether it's for a title or not. Make it make sense, UFC. Make it make sense.